I'm Cray Beaumont Flynn. Welcome to Beyond the Design, a show that gives you a peek behind the curtain of the design industry and shares the stories of those that are the driving force behind it. Well, welcome to Beyond the Design, and our guest today is Mike Hines with Epoch Floral. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Well, we'll just dive right into it, Mike. Share your journey into the world of floral design. What initially sparked you into this field?
I never wanted to be a florist, that's for sure. And I think just growing up, planting flowers and things like that, even then, didn't really think it was going to be anything but a hobby.
Right.
If I took you back 25 years, I was on vacation. I was a young kid. I was like 25, probably a little bit less than that, years old. I went to Rome on vacation, and it ended up staying and apprenticing with a florist who needed some help. I didn't know anything I was doing. I was in retail at the time, visual merchandising, dabbled in interior design. And I was just really interested in the concept of putting flowers together and being able to sell them as a design. And so I apprenticed for 2 or 3 weeks because I didn't have anything to come back to. I was just kind of freelancing and hopping jobs.
Right.
And as I would finish a merchandising project, I did merchandising for showrooms for all the gift and home shows around the country. And again, I was freelancing a little bit in interior design. I would do flowers at the end of my job for the client, and that just sparked people to notice them and like them and want my services and my design technique with floral. I didn't know anything I was doing. I probably spent more money than I made. And then I moved to Chicago, and with my business partner, we both decided to quit our retail jobs at the time and become florists and entrepreneurs and open Epoch Floral in 2001. 1 month, literally 1 month to the day after September 11th.
Oh, wow.
And as the timing may not seem great, it proved very different. People needed to be happy, and flowers made them happy. And it was the one thing they could still have access to while they were kind of hunkered down and confused in this world that we had lived in at that time. So Epoch was born, and here we are today, 20 plus years later.
What defines the unique style or your approach in Epoch floral design when it comes to floral design?
It took me a while to establish that. I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I could put flowers together.
Right.
And basically what I did at the time is what I've learned in Rome is to do all the flowers in my hand as a design into a nice ball shape and put it into a vase and send it out and sell it.
There you go.
And it took maybe 5 years for me to come into my own and say, I'm going to do it my way. I'm not going to use a lot of elements. I'm going to create memorable pieces that people enjoy and that people keep coming back for. And it was scary, but I raised my price point. I took a deep breath, and we are here today because of it. I have clients I've had for 20 years. So our design often feels modern. Monotone. I feel it's very important to stay close to our style and our technique and our brand without venturing too far away from that. I think that's why Epoch's become popular in Chicago, and when I travel to do flowers, it's popular there too. Knock on wood. I mean, I'm not trying to sound pretentious, but I see a lot out there that looks the same, and people are running it as a business first rather than approaching it from a design aspect.
Design and creation. Well, how and where do you get your inspiration for your creations? Are there specific sources or influencers that guide your creative process?
I work from instinct completely. And so I'm only inspired by the flowers I see every morning that I go to the market. So every single morning
Mm-hmm.
at about 6 a.m., I'm at the flower market to see what's fresh, what's new, what's hot, what's interesting. And that is where the inspiration comes from. So when, let's say, somebody places an order for flowers on any particular day, I'm at the market that morning buying those flowers. And so we don't encourage people to be too specific,
Mm-hmm.
because at any given moment, I can change the design just based on what I see and what is interesting to me to design with that morning.
Right. Can you highlight a memorable or particular challenging project that you've worked on, and what lessons did you learn from it?
Every project's challenging. Every single project. The thing
I
with
can assume
flowers,
that, yeah, because you're dealing with a very live substance,
yeah,
that transforms. And
I'm
go
working
ahead.
with
I'm
a
sorry.
perishable item, right?
Right.
And then my medium is perishable.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of emotion behind it from the people receiving that. So my favorite clients are those that are corporate clients that just write a check and say, "See you there." Um, those are the
Easy
best.
peasy.
I
Yeah.
don't do a lot of weddings because of that. I think there's too much emotion already wrapped up in a wedding
Mm,
that the flowers get picked on. No pun intended. I think
right.
that um, so all my projects are challenging only because that's me. That's just who I innately exude some sense of anxiety every time I do floral or design. The most challenging that I've ever done was an event in Dubai in the desert, um, and they wanted fresh flowers. And although Dubai has some great fresh flowers, we were in the middle of a desert in the
Exactly.
heat of Dubai, and that and I was only able to design that on site. So I was there a week ahead of time, and they just said, "Do whatever you want. Let's go for it." And I just sat back and thought, I, I don't know how to do this. This is almost impossible. Maybe we should use fake flowers,
Right.
or maybe there's another element. However, I came up with an idea of hanging things from the ceiling. The tents were air conditioned, and I was able to do flowers without water, amaryllis in particular, that live out of water for a long time, and hang them in pyramids made out of sticks from the
Hmm.
ceiling of the tent, and it worked. Um, yeah, I think that was the biggest challenge at the time.
In an industry where trends evolve quickly, how do you stay innovative while maintaining your signature style?
That's a good question. That sometimes really worries me. With the onslaught of social media, it's easier to be a little more progressive in what you're doing,
Hmm.
because what I show in my reels, for instance, on Instagram or Facebook or whatever medium that is, or whatever channel that is, I do things that usually don't go out the door. I do things that I can conjure up the design in my mind and
Right.
actually produce it in a 30-second reel on social media. So, I don't think there's any new design out there. I don't think there's anything that's ever brand new, and you have to do it, and it has to be um, innovative, for instance. But
Hmm.
but I think what's more fun for me, and somewhat scary, is to do what I do best, and going back to being inspired by the flowers of the day. You know, I don't think that I put a lot of thought into being brand new and
Hmm.
to being innovative, because I don't believe our designs are um, time sensitive. I think they are timeless and
Right.
you know fleeting.
We talked about briefly about process. So when you have a large scale project, do you sketch something out, or do you have ideas that you go by? Or are you just on the whim and start creating once you have the product in hand?
I'm on the whim.
You're on the whim.
Yeah, for a lot of things I do, I can't pre-plan too much because then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes so inside my head that I feel like there's too many boundaries and too many um, roadblocks. I have to do things on a whim. So for an event, for instance, when they want to see a sample, I'm able to do that for that day, but there's no doubt that that actual design is going to change when it comes to the day of the event because I may think of something else, or there may be a new color that I want to introduce, or a
Mm-hmm.
different flower that I had not thought of at the time. There's a small clause in all my contracts that say I can do that. But yeah, I don't like to overly plan and pre-plan for things. Yes, there needs to be some structure because we need to know what
Right.
to order and we need to know our budgets and we need to know things like that. But I can't sit really sterile inside of that box of this is exactly what's going to happen and this is exactly how I'm going to do it.
Right.
I'd be bored if I did it that way.
What inspires and motivates you on a daily process when you're working with a very tangible or object, living, breathing product?
um, my fear of failing,
Yeah.
my fear of it not being good enough. Yeah, I, I, I find that true with a lot of creative people that I know,
Mm-hmm.
in that we want it to be so, we want to produce something that is really in our head and it has to be tangible
Right.
and then at the in the long run the client has to be happy with it. But if I wasn't driven by some sense of fear, then I think I would be bored. And I think being bored is worse than being fearful. So I have to, I get up really early. I get up at 2, 3 in the morning. And I have
Oh wow.
1 hour in the morning that I give myself to drink coffee in bed. Because I feel that's one of life's absolute luxuries. And that's when all my social media happens and I'm able to really unplug what's going to go on for the day. But I always fear too that I'm not going to get it all done in the day. So that's
Right.
why I get to work by 5 a.m. and I'm ready to go, and things get out the door at 10. And I usually don't take a meeting after noon. You're welcome. Um,
Yes.
um, just because I need time to decompress as well.
Hmm.
My mind can go pretty fast when it's around flowers.
Right.
Um, and knowing what may be coming up in the week or what may be coming up in a month, and do I have the stamina, do I have the brain stamina to get that all done in time? So yeah, I'm motivated by getting things done right, and the fear of failing, and I don't want to fail, so I have
Hmm.
to give myself enough time to in a day to work on something.
Is there a particular project that you like working on?
Hmm, that's a really good question. I There are
Or
things
is
I
there or is there a type of project that gives you more freedom and more creativity without set parameters or direction from the client?
I don't take direction from the client well. And in fact, when there is direction from the client, that inhibits me from working or creating the way I want to. So the less
Mhm.
information they give me, the better. But when they send a note saying, "Do whatever you want. I love everything you do," I, I think it's setting me up to fail. So I know I sound like a crazy person,
You're
but
creative,
yeah,
not crazy,
I just think
creative.
that when they start to say, "Do whatever you do. I love whatever you do," I could do something that they've probably never seen before, and they may not like it or they may like it. So it's that 50-50 that I don't like to take a
Mhm.
chance on. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people, I think most people love flowers. A lot of people like floral design.
Mhm.
With the onslaught of social media, however, people are drawn to by what they're seeing in a very two-dimensional way. and they kind of sometimes get hung up on that. And it's people who aren't in the industry. Um, Interior designers are great. I'll do
Mm.
anything for them because they let me be a designer. Um,
Or they probably understand the creativity process and
yeah, and they may say,
yeah.
"Can you just keep it like blue and gray?" Or
Right.
whatever their kind of parameter is on that. It's just the average person who loves flowers and gets flowers when they become too specific, then they already have it in their head what that's supposed to look like. And that can be intimidating to myself.
Is there a signature Mike Hines flower that you always install, or a Epoch Floral that's
No,
your
but there's
signature?
no, but there's one I never do, and that's a sunflower. I don't like them. So
Good to
even I
know.
have flowers I do not like, and if it's a sunflower, for instance, I'll just pluck all the yellow petals off and just leave it kind of green and brown.
Yeah.
But
Very artistic.
I do think Epic has a style. I think it's most of the time, let's say it's for our weekly corporate work, it's two or three elements, two or three kinds of flowers, oftentimes with a branch or wood, something very organic and heavy to
Mhm.
offset those flowers. That's people know that that's from Epic usually. And it's usually a cluster of the same kind of flower and this mono variety kind of stacked together.
Mhm.
Uh, and I find this to be very beautiful. Not a bunch of flowers tipped sideways into a vase of water. We don't do that. That's somebody else that does that very well.
Right.
Um, More of a very clean design.
What role do you believe floristry plays in events or occasions beyond just decoration?
I think it's one of the most important roles,
Mhm.
and here's why. It makes people feel comfortable and at home, and it makes your guests feel, um, you know, cheery and
Right,
happy,
right.
and it's kind of the piece of jewelry that sets the whole outfit perfectly intact. Um,
Well, it extracts emotions. I think it could be
mhm.
happy or sad or warming, like you said.
Yeah, well, even when I'm commissioned to do someone's funeral, which
Mhm.
I've actually really started enjoying doing,
Really?
oddly, when I'm the only one doing it, um, that it still brings a sense of peace and joy to people.
Mhm.
It's never sad. It's never mournful. Those people may never order that kind of flower from me again because it may remind them of that occasion. But
Instant, yeah.
um, yeah, even in people's homes, I've had people say that they're going to get rid of their therapist because they love having flowers in their home every week, and that makes them happier for days and days, and they're not questioned about how their progress is.
Right.
Um, Flowers are very important. Flowers in hotels are important, and it's the first budget that always gets cut. Um,
Mhm.
but when somebody comes into a hotel or even a corporate office and they see flowers, they subconsciously, and it's a proven fact. I just didn't make that up. It makes them feel at home. It makes them feel welcome.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Makes them feel at ease. And
Mhm.
then, for instance, if they're in a hotel and they see that, then they're going to stay within the confines of the hotel and go to the bar and spend more money
Yeah.
within the hotel. So, it's hard to convince a bunch of guys around a boardroom table that because I've tried, but it's proven that wherever there are flowers, people are more apt to feel more comfortable in that dwelling.
Mhm.
So it's true even with an event. I love when I see these big, extravagant, crazy weddings with all the flowers and things hanging over people's heads. It's very pretty. It's just not my style, you know. But I'm sure people walk in and they take a lot of pictures and they think it's the best thing they've ever seen in their whole life. And oh my God, what do they do with all the flowers and how much money do they spend? It just becomes a
Right.
conversation.
With this is a off the wall question. With global warming, have you seen a lot of species less produced or grown and harder to get?
No, because most of the flowers grown are grown in greenhouses and they're genetically modified to grow. So
Mm.
imagine I'm not the only one that needs 100 roses on a
Right,
certain
right,
day. They're
right.
needed all over the world. So, you know, visiting farms in Europe and knowing where flowers are coming from, they're controlled. It's there's this big trend in locally grown flowers, and there's a lot of people now with flower farms um, producing great things and very organic, and there's no
Hmm.
pesticides or they're not trying to genetically modify anything. They're just doing a really good job, and I love using those. But to the point of longevity, they don't live as long than the ones grown for florists, for designers to be
Correct.
produced.
But given
And
your
funny
time,
though, with COVID,
uh-huh.
a lot of the farms started just shutting down and producing food, and so there was during 2 years of a pandemic that there were less available flowers in the world because farms said we're going to produce food because we need food now.
Hmm.
Food and shelter are the things we have to have. Flowers are a luxury item that we don't
Correct.
necessarily need, but if you asked me on any given day, I think they're equally as important.
Right. Want or need? I think it's both. They're
I think it's
wanted and
both.
they're needed. Yeah.
Yeah.
During your time in the past 20 plus years that you've been in business, have you seen sustainability becoming more increasingly important in your industry
Yep.
or eco-friendly practices? And how is that incorporated into design and operations for a business like such yourselves?
Well, this is a tricky subject. Uh, and you can just look at my social media DMs and comments and feed on my certain feeds and reels to see the conversation that's happening when I use something like floral foam, which wasn't ever really that biodegradable. I didn't know that. I just
Hmm.
use it sometimes as a mechanic to putting things together. But there is a coalition, if you will, of people that are very opposed to it and are not afraid to speak their mind about it. Now, there's a certain company that's made it more biodegradable. It biodegrades faster.
Mm.
Um, the locally grown flowers, when you use them, people seem to really jump on that um, sustainability aspect. Um, but I'll tell you what, with me, when people are spending three, four, $500 on a flower arrangement, it better live.
Right,
And so
right.
whatever that, so it's not a farmer's market flower that has nothing but water and sun that grew that. Um, that's going to live a much shorter time than a flower that's grown in Holland in greenhouses.
Hmm.
Not that it's a worse flower or a better flower, it's just the way it's grown. So, yeah, sustainability is important. It very much is important. I mean, imagine all the compost we have on a daily basis.
True.
It's
Right.
important. And I'm not discounting that at all. But I'm old school now. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. I feel like I'm really set in my ways, and I will use many different mechanics to design a flower arrangement. Um, but it always goes back to what I learned in Rome, and is that I can just do it all in my hand and put it in some water. So that's really as sustainable as we get sometimes. I mean, we will use
So,
paint. I'm not opposed to spray painting things. I'm not opposed to dye.
right.
I just kind of love that because it feels so very European to me
Hmm.
and very cool and interesting. In fact, I just did an event last weekend where the client, a big name retailer, a global retailer, wanted dyed tulips that were not painted but dyed, and you can get those from Holland and any color you want. And it was beautiful. And the feedback I got was clients loved it because I had never seen a flower like that before. But they didn't know they were dyed either. I just think it's kind of cool to use different elements. And if I didn't constantly use new things and exciting things, I think it would be, again, boring, and I don't want to be bored.
True. Well, I think a lot of people don't think as floral design as a artistic work or an art form, because
Right.
it does, because you're creating from a living object various aspects. So
Yeah, and I'm not so sure where that came from. I think it may have come from the whole um, FTD era of,
mhm.
teacup flower arrangements.
Right,
and
right.
and I don't know. I can get on a big soapbox about that because I think chefs are the greatest things that ever lived. Um, but when it comes to the florist, we're always second fiddle or third, fourth fiddle to that.
Mhm.
However, they all need us. A chef calls because their restaurant needs flowers,
Yeah.
or an interior designer absolutely needs flowers on the certain coffee table for a photo shoot. You can pick up any design magazine. There's never not a flower arrangement or a plant somewhere in those photos. It just softens the look of things.
I think it softens, and being in the design industry myself, it brings the room to life. It's not
Yeah,
just a sterile room that's being photographed or
good point.
um, uh, displayed, I guess you could say, but it brings the room to life. That there are people there, there are people coming through, and there's living things or living objects in that room.
Yeah, and it feels like home,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it makes you feel comfortable.
So, given your 20 years and starting in Rome, what are you most surprised about that you didn't know when you started this journey?
I'm often surprised at how much people spend on flowers. Just like,
Hey,
whoa.
it keeps you in business.
I know, thank you. Um, I'm surprised, recently I'm surprised of how less people are getting into floral design. When I first started, it was a competitive market.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the onslaught of the mom and pops going away and grocery stores filling their front entrances with fresh flowers, that surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad because people are still buying flowers, albeit in the grocery store. Um, but it surprises me that there aren't more up and coming floral designers in America. Now, in Europe, it's a completely different
Why do
story.
you think that is?
Well, there's schools, you have to be licensed, you have to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in America, you can just roll out of bed and say, I want to be a florist today. You go for it. And then it ruins it for all of us who have been trying and working so hard to perfect our craft
Mm-hmm.
that, just the new person in town is always the most exciting, but they always seem to come back to me or come back to my colleagues who have been around for a while. But I don't know. I think that floristry is not so highly regarded in America as it is in other countries,
Mm-hmm.
especially Europe and Asia, where it's an absolute art form and there's celebrity florists out there, you know.
So, what
It,
would
it
you
also
tell you?
surprises me that how many people want to learn how to do flowers
Right.
and or do floral design, but they don't want it to be a career. When I'm selling classes or lectures or demos that I do, they sell out immediately, and it's not cheap, but they get to
Mm-hmm.
come and get their hands on it and learn something new. And I never knew that was going to be such a big deal, and it has become that. And I get when I don't have workshops or lectures for 4, 5, 6 months at a time, we get a lot of email and a lot of feedbacks. And when are you going to do it? I need to do it. I've got 10 people that want to do it. Can you come and do it at our restaurant, or can you wherever?
Right.
That is a very nice surprise, actually, and it's really kind of fun to do.
Are there any upcoming trends or shifts in floral design that you're excited about or foresee making a impact on the industry?
Here's where I'm just the worst person in the world when it comes to outlook. I, I tend to have blinders on a lot, and I see what's going on out there, and I've seen a few trends here and there that have that I've not really liked, so I've not paid a
Mm-hmm.
lot of attention to it. Um, this very fluffy, weird U-shaped floral designs that I don't understand at all. But no, I stay within myself too much
Yeah.
to know what's going on, what's new, what's hot, because I don't want to be trendy. I want to stay the course of the designs that I do and and can rely on, and they're safe for me.
What's your basic demographic of some of the projects that you've worked on? You mentioned Dubai, but do you go nationally? Do you do international projects consistently?
Not consistently, once in a while. So that's something you have
Hmm.
to really pick and choose. And when I have to travel, more than 200 miles, that's when the price point goes up, and then when somebody is serious. So we
Hmm.
do get a lot of requests, or I get a lot of requests to travel to maybe do an event, or especially to do a lecture or a demo, or some maybe hotels need training
Hmm.
with their floral design because they want it to be a specific look. It's all going to come down to budget, frankly. I Going back to people not going into floristry as much as they used to. I think it's because, or a lot of times, they don't see that there is a large profit in it. And if you have got a great design and you're charging appropriately for that design, because I get this question all the time from up and coming wannabe people on social media of how
Hmm.
to start that business. I always say put your price point as high as you possibly can, because it really, flowers are expensive, and the
Hmm.
art of that's expensive. And if you start to undersell yourself, then you have no worth in designing. Now, if you want to do it in quantity and just have a business and you're just throwing out those coffee mugs full of carnations, that's great. And I don't dismiss that. But if you approach it as an art,
Hmm.
and as a designer, then your price point needs to be up there and worth
Equate
it.
to that, correct?
And, it's true for any artist,
Right.
really. Just, don't be unfair about it and don't be obnoxious about it, but know where your value is. And so I don't travel often, but when I do, it's because there's a good budget and it's a great project. And those two things have to marry really well.
Is there any particular project that you want to do that you haven't been asked to do as of yet?
Oh, there's a million. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, where do I start? Yeah, I enjoy teaching people how to do flowers, and I enjoy being in front of a crowd. And, I want to be on a stage with a giant, jumbotron behind me as as people are just watching and absorbing floral design. I would love to do something like that. I would, I- I'd love to travel more and do more of my workshops globally or even nationally.
Hmm.
It's just to get the right people in that's sometimes tricky. And just even a Q&A. Sometimes people just don't know a lot about flowers.
Hmm.
They
True.
think they do because they're watching social media, but people are kind of starved for that little extra information, and I think it's a niche of people. I don't think
Hmm.
it's, you know, a lot of people will go and watch a cooking show, but will that same niche of people watch a flower show? I'm not so sure,
Correct. Very true.
unfortunately, because I think it's the same thing. You
Hmm.
know, we watch cooking shows, but we're not actually cooking while we're watching the show,
Right.
right?
Right.
We're just kind of mesmerized by the way the onions sauteed.
Right.
And
Very
you kind of
true.
retain that. I think a good TV show. I actually I would actually love to do a Netflix docuseries on floral, and I don't know, I'd call it something like Follow That Flower, and let's go to where it's grown and who's actually touching that seed, and
Hmm.
then how it's
Interesting.
grown and produced, and kind of the nitty-gritty, the dirt behind that industry, and then how it comes to fruition in your town. I think would be a really very interesting, artful, creative way of teaching people more about
A little
flowers.
bit more, yeah. Is there a particular flower that you like to have around you all the time or in your presence in your own personal environment?
Nope.
No?
So it's funny. When I leave work, when I leave the studio,
Uh-huh.
flowers are the last thing I think of.
Really?
I don't. I don't. I don't have. I think I have a poinsettia plant in my home right now that I bought at a grocery store. I like the shade of the color of the pink of it, and it's tiny and it sits on my near my sink in the kitchen. Um, yeah, when I have dinner parties, I don't have flowers on the table. I don't. I kill plants very well. I just I'm so used to that instant gratification and getting things
Right.
done and getting them out the door. But again, I don't like sunflowers, so don't send me sunflowers. Don't put me around the sunflowers. It is odd, but I'm able to really shut down flowers. Now I appreciate them if I see them, if I'm out and about. If it's on
Mhm.
any given day and I go to maybe a restaurant, I'm like, oh, those are pretty flowers, or I know they're there, but I'm not actually taking time to look at them or critique them. I do know that when I go to someone's home and they still have the rubber band on the flowers they bought at the grocery store and it's just sitting in a clear vase, I do tend to ask them to take it to the next step if it's possible. But and I do notice flowers, but I'm able
Mhm.
to really shut down work.
Separation from, yeah, your work.
Yeah, because it's work at the end of the day.
All right.
I love them and I'm inspired by them, and that it puts food on my table. But I'm not obsessed with a 24-hour thought process of being around or near or touching flowers.
So you don't have living walls in your home?
No. Talk about a trend.
Yeah,
People
true.
sure
Very
love
true.
their living walls or their moss walls.
And they're a pain in the ass,
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
just,
That's too much work.
yeah, the filtration system and everything else, people just don't understand. You can't just plop them in and they're going to grow.
It's
But,
fun for 6 months. It's like when you buy a house and you've got a whirlpool jacuzzi tub.
right.
It's so great. So great for like 6 months. And then 3 or 4 years pass and you just haven't used it anymore. It's like,
Right.
what was the point of that? You had to
How'd you come
have.
up how'd you come up with the name Epic Floral? What's its meaning?
It was a Google thesaurus
Yeah.
search. It means it does mean a moment in time that signifies a great event. I like to condense that and just say a moment in time.
Moment in time.
But and it's spelled EPOCH, but I think it's just a French version of anything epic.
Mhm.
Just it's that one thing that was fleeting that made an impact at that time. That's the one thing I love about flowers. They're fleeting. When I was in interior design, it drove me crazy waiting a year or two for a sofa. I thought, oh my God, can't we just have it today and put it into place and make it work? With flowers, I'm at 6 o'clock in the morning, I buy them. By 10, 11 o'clock in the day, they're out the door and I'm on to the next project. I don't have to worry about waiting for something to
Right.
happen.
Instant gratification.
I need instant gratification.
What advice would you have for aspiring floral designers that are looking to get into the industry?
Price your value, know your value,
Mm-hmm.
do your own thing. Don't look and see what other people are doing, especially your neighbors. I, I, I don't know what my colleagues are doing in town, and I'm sure they're doing great. I don't want to know. I don't care. I know what I can focus on. So when it's intimidating to
Mm-hmm.
start your own business, it's intimidating to be your own boss. It's hard being your own artist, but just kind of follow your gut and stick to what you're doing, because if you believe in it that much, it's going to sell.
Mm-hmm.
I, it's really hard to be creative and know that you're worth far more than you thought you were, and that what you are producing, albeit unique, it's sellable.
So when you do get projects, is there a timeline that you'd like to give a padding to your clients or to those projects? Or is it like, okay, you got a project next week, boom, you got to do it, or you like a couple months ahead of time notice?
I like it when it's done. Let's do it next week.
Yeah.
There's less time for people to sit on the idea. When it's a year out, I don't like that. So much can change, you know. So
True.
I like a really fast turnaround if my schedule allows. Um, I do have some clients that I could wait a year to do something for, just because they're like, oh, there's other things. There's just a lot, but I do appreciate them in the long run. Um, yeah, I think that the quicker the better. And it's again goes back to my level of impatience. You
Hmm.
know, I don't want to sit around and think, oh gosh, I need to be in Istanbul in 3 years. I can't put my head around that. And knowing me, let's say I did have a gig in Istanbul in 3 years, I would
Hmm.
wait until the week before to actually think about how that's going to be designed and planned. And that adrenaline of procrastination fuels me to do the best job I possibly can.
It's like, oh, oops, got to get going.
Yeah, it's like, oh, let's do in an hour. Ooh, what am I going to do? I do my best work under pressure like that, but and I shouldn't, as I'm getting older, and I think I don't know if my heart can handle this anymore.
Right.
I really procrastinate a lot.
So, what's your vision? What's next for Epoch Floral?
More lectures, more demos, more traveling to show people across the nation and the world just my style and what I can do. And um, I don't know, 6 years ago I wrote a book.
What's the
More of
name
a
of that book?
that's Uprooted. It's more of a picture book. I didn't want to do
Hmm.
too much writing because I don't particularly love to read books, but I do love anecdotes and quotes. So that's
And the pretty pictures.
and beautiful pictures, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's always been in the back of my mind to maybe do something more. I don't want to say a recipe book because I don't think floral design should have a recipe, but I don't know. Maybe it coincides with what I teach and what I've learned. So that might be something we're working on. It takes forever, and it's
Right. Right.
a grueling process. I don't know. As a creative, sometimes you just are masochistic about that and want to be like beaten down and what more could I possibly do? And I can't handle this, and I'm never doing it again. And then it starts to happen, and then yeah, I don't know.
Do you do public installations? Do you ever get projects that are for the public use, not so much private?
No, and I'd absolutely love to do that, or just something that's a weekend,
Hmm.
down the steps of the library in New York. Or I did one time. I did flowers hanging up the side of a giant building downtown Chicago, but that was only to promote my book. But it was cool, it's like the news people were there, and it was only for that day, and they're plummeting in like a waterfall over, 6 stories of a building. Was pretty cool.
Wow.
I
Sounds
I
amazing.
would love to do more of that. That is something, however, that does take a lot more planning because there's mechanics and
Hmm.
many other people behind the scenes involved in something like that.
Well, Mike, is there anything else you'd like to share or tell us or
I don't think so. I think
promote?
no, you know what? I don't know about promoting myself. That makes me uncomfortable.
Well,
I do enough of
well,
that, I think, online, and in fact, we did 3 reels today, and that's why I'm like, oh God, I'm exhausted. We can't edit them yet, but yeah, I think that my flowers and my design promote. They're in charge of promoting themselves on that. I think it's that.
well, where can our listeners find you online?
Okay, you can go to Instagram. You can do it at MD Hines. or at Epoch Floral. That's EPOCH Floral. You can go, I believe we have a YouTube channel. I don't know the exact name of that. I know it exists though. So if you look up Epoch Floral, you should be able to find it. Facebook, it's Mike Hines or it's Epoch Floral. TikTok, it's Hines Mike at Hines Mike on TikTok.
Well, perfect. Well, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate your time, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for finding me. It's been a pleasure. You have a great podcast.
Thank you. Take care.
I appreciate it. Thank you.